the heart for 30 minutes or 40 minutes before you, and many times you can resuscitate patients. So this device has been funded by the Wellcome Trust, and we are again now struggling with how to do animal trials with this large animal trials to demonstrate the proof of principle, to measure the pressures intracardiac, and also use the device. So we are now going to probably do the work illustrating. This is another device for inserting the nasogastric tube. Now the nasogastric tube is normally supposed to be inserted in the esophagus, should not go into the lungs. This device ensures that it goes straight into the esophagus and never goes into the lungs, so that when you're feeding patients, it is ensured that it goes into this. This has been licensed to a Japanese company because they have a large elderly population. A Japanese multinational has picked this product up. So innovations in medicines, whether it be devices, whether it be diagnostics, whether it be mHealth, whether it health IT, they all, whether it be the Arvind or the Sri Chitra heart valve or the Goat Clinic, the of Assam, or our cardboard splits, they all need a platform, and nothing exists. So we started a new journal in collaboration with the BMJ. It's called the BMJ Innovations, and this has 5 verticals: mHealth, devices, diagnostics, systems innovation, health IT, and health. So this journal is going to be launched, the first issue in December, when we do our 8th Indian MedTech Summit on the 12th and 13th of December. And I leave you there for better and affordable healthcare with frugal innovation. Happy to answer any questions.
Question?
We started with thank you them first for the position.
That's what I'm asking. Otherwise, they spend an hour with them and he asks each of them what.
What is the most challenging aspect of frugal innovation?
I think the most challenging aspect of any innovation to start with is to find what is the competitive landscape, what is and how we are going to develop it. Once we develop it, or if we come up with a nice or bright idea, then from taking it from the idea to the actual handheld prototype, to be able to test it and then deploy it. So there are challenges at every level that we feel, and then have the people accept it. That is another huge big challenge, and then the distribution network, and I mean, it would follow any of these 3 pathways. It could be a startup, which the innovator, since he's so passionate about it, he may have his own startup and try to develop it, and then he faces with the challenge of the distribution network. If we license it to a multinational, then it becomes easier because they have the infrastructure and the wherewithal to really take it to its logical end. The other challenge that we face is when we license it to Indian, the Ministry of Health, where we license it at very small profits because of the large numbers. So the innovators sometimes agree to that when they don't want to really take it forward on their own. Then we license it to the Ministry of Health, and that has really worked, and it's probably a new sort of a mechanism that we have developed, and we are facing and finding it useful for getting things to the public. Yeah.
You were talking about frugal innovation, the way in which you do this, identify a need and then filter it out.
Yeah.
For a long time, our academic labs have been innovating in the sense that they were patenting, they were sort of thinking of hypothetical questions, coming up with solutions, and many of them are in sports storage.
Yes.
If you sort of go back and look at those solutions, is there a way by which you can link those solutions with the real needs? And look at that.
Many times you can, but I can tell you, once this multidisciplinary team does their own need finding, they are passionate about it and they want to take it to the logical end. And that works very well, that it does not go into a cold storage. I mean, they will come up with 500 unmet clinical needs, then they filter them, then they come up with the top 4 or 5 concepts, and they may work on 1 or 2 of them. And the other 2, we have a full library for the last 8 years of all the needs that have been done in different areas, whether it be pediatrics, whether it be emergency medicine, whether it be gastroenterology, whether it be orthopedics or trauma. So we just, we have an area at the beginning that we make these people work in, rather than all over the place at Oration. They go to a certain area, whether it be emergency medicine, then they spend the full 3 months in emergency medicine and have their immersion in emergency medicine. So obviously many of these ideas or the unmet clinical needs have been there for many years. But once these students identify themselves, they feel a kind of an ownership and want to take it forward, which works well.
DRDO and the DRC and the CSIR pool, if we were to combine together, are there something available out there, which are sort of can be readily used? I was just sort of curious.
I think there are several innovations from CSIR and DRDO labs which are used. In fact, we are also collaborating with DRDO for, and they have given us some unmet clinical needs of a special use all maker or some army at high altitudes, and they have some needs which we're trying to work on. So basically, we told them that this is one of our products which has been to this prototype level, and we want you to do advanced engineering on this, and we will do one thing for you. So it's a kind of and that's the test case that we're doing with DRDO.
You said that you have you form teams of people
Yes.
who are called fellows.
Yes.
They work with the gene identification, prototyping, and so on. It's for about 6 months. Or 2 years.
2 years they remain together.
They remain together for 2 years. Now, what sustains them? Because you see, you start with the passion.
Yeah,
Work, but we have found, for example, in the ventures, a lot of people then lose their interest halfway through the game.
Yeah.
So how do you sustain that?
Exactly. That's an important point. What happens is that by the end of 6 months to 1 year, they are able to identify the need, they are able to filter it, they work on the top concept, they prototype it, they file for provisionals, and they once they see some light at the end of the tunnel, they are many times out of the team of 4 or 5, 2 would say, I'm joining this multinational for this job, but I will have only 5% stake in the whole thing. Whatever you want to do, you do it. Then the other 3 would take it up and apply for grants, get the grants, and form their own company. So once they form their own company, then they are very driven. That has worked.
How many companies have come up?
We've got 6 companies in these 8 years.
But Balak, you also mentioned that your selection procedure is such that it picks up the correct.
Yeah, when we select, and Professor Jayesh has been. Yes, Professor Jayesh has been on our selection committee several times, and he has really been a supporter right from year 1. What we do is at that time of selection, we, as a group of people who are selecting, identify certain teams. This doctor, these 2 engineers would form this, and this designer would form this team. This doctor with this biomedical engineer, with this civil engineer, would probably be more into diagnostics and would be useful at this sort of a team. So that's how we carve it out initially. Many times it works, many times it doesn't.
I'm taking the back then. I'm hoping I'll ask a student question. If you were a student in this group,
Yes.
and if you're going to have 10 people from a country of this size every year selected, I think you're dramatically restricting the ability. So, 2 questions. How do you get into this group of students? 2, how are you going to make this 6 companies into 6,000 companies or 60,000 companies for making to do this now? Otherwise, the scale is not going to happen.
Exactly. I think that's a very valid point, and the DBT has been talking about it for many years. That how are you going to scale up? And everyone says, how are you going to scale up? So it's my job is to light the fire. So the fire is sort of lit, and people have started visualizing this concept that it is working. We've been approached by, I think if we are able to foster some sort of this education of the biodesign process in the engineering curriculum as well as in the medical curriculum. That will be the most important thing.
But what about the PhDs? I mean, a lot of these questions come from there. How are you going to help them get to change the mindset of being I do a PhD, I do a postdoc, I become a professor?
See some role models where they found successes, people having become millionaires, they would themselves go in that direction, I think. But the scaling up is definitely an issue, and we are worried about it. We need to have more and more institutes working towards it, and I think even if we can partner with ILS in some form, that we have some sort of an exchange of our faculty or some of the students from here, so that they get a flavor of what this is all about. That'll be useful.
Well, fantastic. I heard you 2 weeks back at ICMR and still I'm saying it's fantastic. So that is a couple of, I think, answering quickly on Dr. Pradeep's question. I think we have started a small translation accelerator on family taking including discoveries, which has potential to take it to discovery. So I think that model is emerging and IREC is going to support such models. That's something, but I do not want to digress. My question is that I think you have 3 I's: identify, invent, and implement. It is fascinating. The idea, but the model is still lock-in. Once you lock in right at the beginning. Someone who has identified a social need which is not necessarily from your pool of identification screening. Can they come in at the invention level? Can they come at the implementation level? Because your
Absolutely,
platform is amazing.
absolutely. So long as their idea is they are kind of married to it and they're supporting it, I think we are happy to support whatever little strength that we have at Oration Institute. We will be happy to take it, because that is where you're on the ground. And that's where you realize whether this is going to work or not going to work. When we start talking about patients, when you start talking to the doctors who are going to use it or not going to use it, we don't want to create a need. We don't like to create a need and force innovation. We want something which is which is actually a burning unmet need.
Yeah, I think you mentioned in your speech about the regulatory scenario. We need to be more freedom so that innovation can happen. So is it with respect to standards or is it with respect to time? That's the first question I have. Second is, if we do not have good regulatory standards, if we do not ensure that the regulatory standard tells you that this is meeting ISI and mark or something else mark, the resistance from medical profession to use it for commercial reasons and also technical reasons will be there. Yes. And one of the challenges I'm sure you must be facing is that though you have good product, there are no takers. Because they will know this is like you done experiment on 10 patients or 20 patients or 50 patients is not enough. You would still depend on that. Classical example is that India makes all the stents, India makes all the pacemakers, but we still import. And they are no inferior than what is we can find abroad.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, we do not have quality standards to prove it that they are equal, and the patient should use cheaper. But why should they spend too much money? But we all, I think, spend 1 lakh rupees, other spending 10,000.
That's the most important point. And I've been on this war for stents for the last 15 years actually. So I've been very closely associated with it. And what is the problem is that our regulation for medical devices does not exist till the Indian Medical Device Regulation Act happens, in draft. But until that happens, I think the CE route is the route that we can follow for all our devices, and that is the one we are following. That is a simple route, it is not complicated. FDA is complicated, but we've got one product which has got FDA clearance also. I think we are interested at the moment in the Indian market, but how to get the confidence of the physician. That is the most difficult part, and even for stents, even for pacemakers. So currently, what we are not concentrating on is complicated devices or class 3 devices. We are concentrating on class 1 or class 2 simple devices, which people would readily accept, and the agencies would readily accept. For example, the splint. Now this is not available in probably buy 2 or keep them in their car in a boot. So that is what we're starting with. But once we come to complicated devices like stents, then a huge big problem arises. The second, to add to that confusion, is the problem of corruption and kickbacks and all that, which is another huge big issue for stents and pacemakers that is happening in this country. So we need to have some method of. I agree with regulation, but I am of the opinion when you're going to do innovation, we don't want to regulate too much just now, particularly when we're just starting out for regulating. It strangulates the innovation. And I mean, in a country like India, where the culture has not been there for innovation, we are more involved in publications and research and getting our impact factor and getting up. So I think that little bit, people have to go above that and start talking about patents and getting those patents and then trying to commercialize them. So that is a mindset which has to be fostered, and it will happen gradually. But you have a valid point, actually.
So I think with this we. Oh, I can't send out first. The last question.
I have a question. As you said, like India, we have very few PhD persons. So, like as far as I've understood, people think like we are not paid well when we do PhD. So lots of perseverance in India to pursue PhD. So how can we solve that? Like how can we, the major problem is funding, I think so. And the second question is, as you said, we need innovation. So how can we reduce the cost of innovation, like more for less? How can we do it with the limited resources, like with the limited resources and the limited amount of spending?
Yeah. I think PhDs is difficult to, as I said, the numbers of PhDs is small. How to motivate them, how the right people go into PhDs and remain in that. I think we have to set a standard that people, they should join industry, they should innovate for industry, they should set up their own industry, and that normally what happens is after a PhD, one gets an academic position, and then one goes into a comfort zone, and then that's the end of it all. So you have to be constantly out of that comfort zone and being uncomfortable to do more. How to motivate people to do that? Again, as I mentioned, if you demonstrate successes of people who have been able to set up their own companies or have been able to patent products and are doing well, that culture will happen, and it will. I don't see any reason why it will not happen.
Can I add to that? There is a very interesting survey that was done by the American Chemical Society, where, including in India, we always look at the exceptions, right? But most of us are not exceptions. There is a Gaussian distribution, so most of us are in the average. If you're an average person, there is only one correlation between how much money you make, how comfortably you live, to anything else, and that's the level of your education. On an average, the PhD leads a much more comfortable life than anybody else. Period. Sure, there's Bill Gates who's uneducated, there's They are the exceptions, right? But most of us are in the one or two standard deviations from the average. And what pays the most is getting a PhD. This can't motivate you, I don't know what that's about.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to request Shri Pankaj Bhai Patel to facilitate participation.
Yes, sir.
Sir, just
With that, it. Just.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So I think we've had a lot of excitement, and I'm sure at least one of us, I mean the students, would be becoming part of your center soon. May I now request our chairman of the advisory board of ILS, Shri Pankaj Patel, to deliver the foundation day address. He is a very eminent person from the pharma industry. He is the chairman and managing director of Zydus Catalog and Catalog Healthcare. He comes from a master's in pharmaceutics and pharmaceutical technology, but has over 30 years of experience in industry, in the pharmaceutical industry in India. He has research and techno-commercial expertise, and incidentally, Zydus is the only Indian pharma company to launch its own patented NCE, Lipaglyn, the world's first drug to be approved for the treatment of diabetic dyslipidemia. We are indeed honored, sir, to have you with us, such an innovator. The other achievements on the for him that he sits on the board of several institutions, such as the chairperson of the board of governors of the ICER Kolkata. He's a member of the board of governors and also the chairman of the finance committee of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Of course, he's our own who sits on the governing board of Ahmedabad University, and of course the chairman of our School of Life Sciences. He's the member and member of the board of management of Narsimhanji Institute of Management Studies, the chairman of the FICCI Committee on Pharmaceuticals, as well as the chairman of FICCI of Gujarat State Council. He's the executive chairman, vice president, trustee of the Gujarat Cancer Society, and chairman of the Gujarat Cancer and Research Institute. On a personal front, I would like to mention that he's an individual par excellence. On a personal front, I have interacted with him on several occasions. The one thing I like about him is that he takes quick decisions. I think that makes us very happy, because that's how we've been able to grow. And he's been forward-looking, so I think that's the other thing. We have been very fortunate in having him as a chairman of the advisory board. And indeed, we are indebted to him for all the efforts that he's put in to bring up this institute to the place that we are. So these words may I request from Pankaj to share his wisdom with us.
Thank you, Dr. Alok, for the nice words. And I don't know, I get very embarrassed when I hear too much about me, whether I deserve it or not. I'm again very happy to meet you, young students, and as our learned keynote speaker, Dr. Bhargava, said in his opening that how India has made progress. One of the things he mentioned about more women going to school, and I think we have a great example where there are more girls here in our school than the boys. And I think it looks like the future is in the hands of the girls for our life science as far as our institute is concerned. But I think that's the trend. It's a very welcome trend, and I think we are, in fact, even this year also we see the same thing. So it's a very heartening and very good thing that happened for our institute. 2 years is a short journey, but it's a very important journey for all of us, because it's the founding years for the institute, and what we do now today is going to actually create the path for the future. We all have tried hard, including the faculty here, to really create a different institute. And as we see the kind of response we are receiving to our programs, and also the kind of academic and other activities happening here, clearly indicating that we are different than all education institutes you see around the vicinity. And I think that's the good beginning. but it's a work which has to go on. And I think as we move forward, we need to really see that we really create an institute which everybody in India, and sometimes even from abroad, would like to come and get educated here and work here. And I'm sure it's not impossible. And I think reason why it is possible, because from the beginning we have put focus on research. And I think over a period in education system, we have just forgotten about research. And it's very clear there cannot be research without education. And education cannot be there without research. So it's an interrelated thing. And that's why if an institute is not involved in research, it cannot teach the student the cutting edge technology or new things that's going to happen in the future. And it's basically not only just giving you the theoretical and science knowledge which is already available in the world, because you can read that on net now these days, but actually taking you through that into something where unknown can be explored. And I think very interesting talk Dr. Bhargav gave is about this interesting innovation opportunity. So one can think that in this whole area of healthcare, there is so much of opportunity. If you take from an economic perspective, if India is going to spend from 1.2% to 3% of its GDP on healthcare by 2017, and our GDP will also be much higher in number, the size of the industry itself is going to be so big, and that's why there's so much of opportunity. If you look at problems people face in healthcare are enormous. If you see in your own home, if you go around and meet your friends, everywhere you will find there is an opportunity. It's somebody who has to really take that opportunity, create something out of it, which can be then marketed, that can be very successful. And people have done across the world many, many times again. So I think it's important. Last week, I had met somebody, this Monday actually. This Monday I met somebody who's developed a simple program wherein he can basically record his own data on his body profile in terms of blood pressure, in terms of sugar, etc. Can be linked to a doctor, and then he doesn't have to go to doctor, and doctor can consult him through net using IT technology into healthcare. There are so many other things which we have seen. In fact, our own colleague here has a very interesting thing to, and all of you are aware of the number to tell you. But I think the point is, we have so many things around which can be really explored. And as young minds, you all have opportunity actually to really learn here, but take it from here, go to our PhD programs, maybe work with us and with also institute like Dr. Bhargava has, to really create something new and become an entrepreneur one day. Most of you are Gujaratis, and I believe Gujaratis are entrepreneurs. And I think, I'm sure all of you will see this as an opportunity. And I think women entrepreneurs are coming up now very rapidly. So don't worry that since you are a woman, you have to just do a work or look at the home. You can also become an entrepreneur, very successful entrepreneur in time to come. A lot of things are happening at the institute, and more things are going to happen. I think one of the important things is that we are fortunate that we are starting some very interesting new programs in this whole university. Not only life science, but we also are doing engineering. We are also doing the information technology programs, which are also of the high standards. And I think what really is going to happen, that once the campus becomes one, where ICT, ILS, all are going to be closer to each other, we all will be able to collaborate together and create newer things. Maybe someday we will have also medical school attached to our things, and through that we would basically able to integrate all different faculties of science into health science. So one thing, life science means biology, life science means zoology, life science means medical science. To some extent, you can say, but no, it's everything. Life science is everything. It has a physics also in that, because when you say intraocular, it's a lot of physics. When you talk about some of these devices, this is all engineering. So it's everything is there in actually life science, and opportunities are plenty. And I think as the institute grow, I'm sure we will be able to offer you much more opportunity in time to come. Diagnosis is one area where there are low-hanging fruits which can be picked up, and I think Institute is going to work on that area where we can create something path-breaking in that area. But I think what is going to be important for us is that continue doing something different, new, innovative in that institute. Maybe again, see, small and frugal innovation are also equally important. We don't have to only talk about a man on the Mars or the mission to Mars. We also have to talk about something even simpler than, much simpler than that. And all these are all equally important. And I believe that even these frugal innovations are actually changing life of many people. And I think that's so important for all of us. So I believe that the ILS is on the right path. I am seeing that the very second year we have had to actually increase our number of students to be admitted and increase the strength, because there was so much of rush and we didn't want to refuse people who want to really come here and learn. It's a very good beginning, and it all depends on all of you, because you are going to be my ambassador. You are the first batch who will go out and you will represent the ILS, and you will create the impression, as I told you last time also, you will create the impression for all of us, the institute, that this is the institute where quality of education is good. Because of quality of education, the students coming out of there are bright and knowledgeable, and that's why they have a great opportunity to work in institutions, in the government, in the companies, in the industry, but also become entrepreneurs in time to come. I want to compliment you and wish you a happy second year, and I'm sure more years to come to see more successes for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to request Professor Rishi Shankar to introduce and welcome the Provost of Ahmedabad University.
Once again, it's my privilege on behalf of the Institute and the faculty and the students to welcome Professor Shailen Mehta, who is, as of today, the first thing in the morning is our new provost. And it is very heartening on both sides to have a new provost on the same day as we have our second birthday. And this is, I think, a very lucky woman. So I think personally. So I would say that in having Professor Mehta with us here is something which is, I'll keep it very short, we are running out of time, but I'll still say some salient things about him. And one of the issues is that he starts off with great things in the beginning itself. He does a master's in Delhi School of Economics, and then does the MPhil at Oxford University, and then goes to a PhD in Harvard University. There it is. And then, of course, I mean, one of the things which I found very amazing on short interactions with him is, I didn't know, and I read through his CV, is that he has several, not only he has been in several coveted academic positions at Purdue University for last 2 decades, but he is also an outstanding teacher. And he is at university for just teaching. That being one, adds on to it the glamour and the great things in science. He has done research, and that too of outstanding quality, which addresses issues. And one of the issues which he addresses in research, and is his passion right now, I found out, is the evolution of modern universities, how they evolved. And it is starting back to almost 3,000 years till today. So he's looking at universities like Takshila, universities today, and what will be the SOPs of these new universities, which will make them innovative creativity systems and design systems, which Professor Balram talked about. So he is looking into that, and we are looking forward to some of his publications on this in just a while. And these institutional innovations, which characterize modern universities, great modern universities, is something, an SOP, which ILS is also looking forward to. That we look how our SOPs match and what we do next on our SOPs in making institutions great. So it is indeed very heartening to have him here. And here we have a perfect blend of not only an excellent teacher and a learner, but also in terms of entrepreneurship. It's the perfect blend of teaching and entrepreneurship, academic excellence and entrepreneurship. So I think we look forward to him, and it is good that we hear him on our second birthday today itself, as soon as he joins. So I welcome Professor Mehta and I request him to give the
Thank you, Professor Shankar, for those kind remarks. And I must say it was a real treat to listen to Dr. Bhargava, to Professor Bhargava. Because as a strategy professor, I cannot count the number of times I have heard presentations, cases, stories of frugal innovation. And you have to wonder what is it that you will learn in the 100th or the 101st presentation. But to my astonishment, and but not to my surprise, because I was sort of expecting it given his stature, I learned a lot, and I will, in my remarks today, build on some of the thoughts that Dr. Bhargava had. But in particular, the thing which was very striking about his presentation is that while he went through the standard list of a dozen or so great innovations, low-cost innovations that have come out of India, he added 6 or 7 of his own that have come from his lab. Right? So I think that, in some sense, is a remarkable achievement, and I think we need to give him a big hand. This is the kind of work that will really put India on the map, not just the research map, but also on the map of human accomplishment, where you talk about reducing suffering. And Pankaj Bhai also talked about the storied history, of the educational accomplishments here in Ahmedabad, and essentially IRS in particular is very much a reflection of that. And it's the greatness of the philanthropic tradition in Gujarat that these activities are not only nurtured over time, but also supported in the proper way. Every year, I go to, I teach senior executives around the world, and one of the annual trips that I look forward to is a trip to Pakistan. And I go there and I teach, and I work with the CEOs there. The next one is due in December, and I've gone there twice before. And every year I have requested that I be allowed to go to Takshila. And in both cases, both the Indian ambassador and the Pakistani ambassador said, no, you cannot at this point, because the situation, even though Takshila is only 30 miles from Islamabad, it is a little bit of a disturbed area. And so I have not been able to go so far, but I hope that it'll be different in December. But the reason why I mentioned Takshila is for a very, very interesting reason that is of great interest also to IRS. Now, Takshila was clearly the very first university in the world. And by the way, outside of India, people have pretty much forgotten about Takshila and essentially, and for that matter, the 6 other great universities that we have in India, including Vallabhi in Gujarat, let's not forget. So the interesting thing about Takshila is that it had a great medical school. And in fact, the medical school has been forgotten and would have been forgotten but for 3 sources. The first is the mention in Charak Samhita. Essentially, Charak Samhita talks about a research conference that was convened where there was peer review of medicine. And we know from other sources that Charak was actually the court physician of Kanishka and was based in Takshila. The second reference is not available in any modern language. It is in the Chinese Tripitaka, where the description of the medical hospital at Takshila and the big hospital that was run by Jivak initially, and his gurus Atri and Pingala. Now Jivak was the physician of the Buddha. After he came into contact with the Buddha, he gave up his residency at Takshila and essentially followed him, and essentially set up a hospital in Rajgir, which is you can still see the Jivak 1 as it is called, and essentially also in many other places in India. And the third and the most interesting evidence that we have of the hospital at Takshila is from archaeological evidence. So John Marshall, the head of the Archaeological Survey of India at that time, about 100 years ago, was the one who dug up the three cities of Takshala. Takshala is it's one of the oldest cities in the world, and there are multiple layers. He dug up 3 layers, and on one layer, which is roughly I think about 2,000 years old, he came up with a trove of medical equipment. Essentially, these were surgical instruments of Takshala. Again, this is not very well known, and I had to dig this up. And these instruments are very modern instruments. One of them, and so essentially there's a Pakistani doctor in one of the universities in Britain who subsequently wrote a paper essentially taking the trove of medical instruments that are in the museum at Takshala and comparing them item by item in some cases with the instruments that are in use today. I think Dr. Bhargav talked about forceps and essentially changing the bend by 90 degrees, 80 degrees. You have those kinds of forceps with the different kinds of bends which are in the Takshala Museum. Now the reason why this is interesting is because surgery was of course invented in India. It was not invented in Takshala, it was invented in Banaras because Charak was the clinician par excellence, but the surgeon was of course not Charak but Sushrut. So Sushrut essentially invented surgery, and along with it also invented a whole pharmacology, because if you're going to do surgery, among other things, you'll have to have anesthetics. And again, we don't have any written evidence of this, but the oral tradition indicates that the anesthetics that were used were an infusion of marijuana in alcohol. So this is something which is not being used currently, but it provides sort of very interesting opportunities for research. If you were to create anesthetics with far fewer side effects, because these are natural products, and so how you essentially build that is going to be extremely important. Now, I could go on for a long time about Takshala, but that is not my point here today. What I want to do is to link up to what Dr. Bhargav talked about, 3 key points of identify, invent, and implement. And this is sort of important. Now, the identification obviously happens when you ask why. And that is what gave rise to Takshala in the first place. The first person to ask why in the world was 8th century BC in Gandhar, around Takshala. It was Uddalak Aruni. Uddalak Aruni was the father, and he's not a name that is very well known today, but Uddalak Aruni is known as the father of 2 sons who are much better known. One was Shvetketu, and the other one was none other than Nachiketa. So Uddalak Aruni was the first person to ask why, and all of these community of philosophers basically Gandhar, and that is how they co-located in Takshala. And again, I won't go into the details. I could spend several hours here giving you the sociology and the archaeology and the knowledge production system that is there. That is what I'm working on right now. But the interesting thing is that all of these people co-located and they created the most intense intellectual atmosphere where they asked why. And they asked why not just in philosophy, which is where it started, but also in medicine. And these medical traditions were then transmitted to China, to Greece, to the Arab world later on, to all over India, and indeed all over the world. In fact, I was telling Professor Dhawan that one of the great scientific books that was translated into Arabic, apart from Charak and Sushrut, of course, was a book on toxicology, the book of poisons. As you can imagine, there is nothing more scientific than the study of poisons, because if you don't get it right, you will kill people. So these were the kinds of things that were sort of being produced by the knowledge creation system there. So identification and invention were happening, but the third and the most important thing, the implementation part, you should not forget. Because the other reason why I wanted to go to Takshala is because it is the intersection of 3 great trade routes. No, it's not accidental that the great university, the first great university, was created at Takshala. Takshala is on something which 2,300 years ago was called the Uttar Path. Uttar Path, as you know, means the northern route. The northern route. Now, why was it called the northern route? It was called the northern route because it linked 2 cities in the northwest, which were very close together, which were in those days called Purushpura and Pushkalvati, which is modern-day Peshawar, to a city which was then called Tamralit, or Tamluk. It is called Tamluk today. It's in Bangladesh. It is at the mouth of the Ganges in the Bay of Bengal. So you can imagine this is a 2,000-mile road which linked Pushkalvati to Tamralit. And later on, Sher Shah Suri essentially renovated it, and the British made use of this as the highway that controlled the empire, and it is today called the Grand Trunk Road. Most people have this mistaken impression that Sher Shah Suri built it. He only repaired it. I mean, it was a great endeavor, but he only repaired it, and that became the basis of the integration of the Mauryan Empire and later the Mughal Empire. But the reason why I mentioned that is because of my third point, which is the implementation part. Now, the Mauryan Empire didn't just use this road as the road that connected the empire, the two parts of the empire, right? All the way from Patliputra to Takshila. And these were also the seats of government. Eastern part was ruled from Patliputra, the western part from Takshila. In fact, Ashoka's son Rahul was sent as the governor of Takshila. So the interesting thing there is that all along this road, they created a series of hospitals. And these hospitals were not just for people, because obviously if people travel these 2,000 miles, they were to fall sick. You know, that took many months. The journey, if you were not on fast horses, in which case it took a couple of days. But for most people on carts, ox-drawn carts, it would take a couple of months and people would fall sick. And they need to be treated. So a whole series of hospitals were created, and we know this because this is mentioned in the Ashokan edicts. And by the way, again, we are losing touch with our history so much so that we don't realize how all over India these edicts are found. In fact, one of them, I don't know, Dr. Bhargav, if you're aware of this, is right in your backyard. There's an Ashokan edict, literally 3 kilometers from where you are, in east of Kailash. In the heart of Delhi, there's an Ashokan edict that nobody in Delhi has heard about. And these edicts, if you put them together, you find that the emphasis is not just on supporting the asking of why, it's not just on the supporting of invention, but it's also on implementation. That is, you want to take all these medical innovations, you want to take all of these interesting ideas, and you want to make them available to the people in a form that they can use. And my conjecture is that this Uttar Path, this Grand Trunk Road, subsequently became also the innovation highway, because this was also the route through which all these innovations were disseminated, and essentially they became part of the global discourse, not just in India. So that brings me to my final point, and the purpose of the university. The purpose of the university is threefold. It is to learn, it is to share, and it is to relate. And here, learning is, of course, the creation of knowledge. Sharing is, you know, all you bright-eyed individuals, you know, who are here to learn. And so, essentially, we share that learning with you. And then the third part is what we have here, our distinguished guests. We are here to relate. We are here to network. We are here to learn from the people who are there, and also to communicate with them what it is that we are doing. So all three aspects of this university system really are extremely important. And the great thing about ILS is that right from the first go, from the first year, it has focused on all. It has done so in a way that puts it at the cutting edge of discovery, cutting edge of sharing, cutting edge of relating in terms of the world. So it gives us a great model. This is one of the crown jewels of Ahmedabad University. But more importantly, it is not just an exemplar for us as to how excellence can be created, nurtured, and disseminated, but it's also an exemplar for many other institutions that will undoubtedly be created throughout India. So without further ado, let me thank, first of all, Dr. Bhargav. Let me thank Pankaj Bhai. Let me thank our distinguished guests here from IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, from Bangalore, and you, the students, for making this such a grand success. Thank you very much indeed, and on to bigger and even greater heights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the thought-provoking talk. I would now request Professor Rishi Shankar to say a word.
So, like all good things, this program comes to an end, and it's my duty to propose the vote of thanks. It's a privilege to be here on this occasion and to say that we are not only thankful, but we are also inducted to Professor Bhargav today for sparing time, his invaluable time to come here and enlighten us on the frugal innovations. And what I found is the 3 I's and the SOPs therein, which would be kind of the hallmarks for students and creativity and innovation classes as we go on further into the courses. So that would be a thing which you will follow, and remember Professor Bhargav on that to start with. And then, of course, I would be failing in my duty if I do not thank profusely Shri Pankaj Patel for our Chairman Advisory Board and our major institutional mentor for his kind words and his immense support. And the things he said today also are, some of them are to be remembered in terms of what we look at in future of ILS. We are of course grateful to Professor Helen Mehta for saying things and connecting us to our history and to making us remember that there is so much to learn. History is not to be just given up and forgotten by scientists. It is to be remembered now, considering in light of what he said today. And of course, I thank profusely also Sri Praful Anubhai, our Board of Management Chairman, and Professor Carlo. And these 2 people have been immense support and guiding lighthouses for us, I mean, in terms of what we do and what we think. So it is good that they are here today. And of course, all the distinguished visitors, as well as the advisory board members, and of course, our new found friends from Bangalore who are here today. So I thank all of them on behalf of the Institute and the staff. And of course, we also thank the administrative and support staff of the ILS, and as well as the Ahmedabad University for their time and for making things possible in organization of this event. And most of all, I would be failing also if I do not say that I thank the institute's students, because they are our major source of energy, the solar cells, and their enthusiastic support, of course, will keep us going and making this organization better and better organization. Thank you so much.
I think we have some snacks for all of you, and then we go for our advice.
Everyone, please, time for the national anthem, please.
भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाए तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you, everyone.